Hello, everyone. Welcome to the new episode of Professionals Unplugged. I'm your host, Utkarsh Shukla, and let me introduce you to my guest, Marie. Marie, thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you for having me.
So, let's start with our very basic question. Can you please introduce our audience to yourself, like who you are, what work you do, anything you want us to know about you?
Sure. So my name is Marie Ellis. I am a best-selling ghostwriter and editor. I am a journalist, and I own my own company called Muse Content, where I help individuals and businesses tell their stories through books or articles or anything involving the written word.
That's really amazing. I think you are wearing a lot of feathers on your head, right, at this moment.
I am, just like you, actually.
Thank you so much. So, can you just tell more about like ghostwriting? Like many people, they got confused with ghostwriters with content writers, right? And so, if you can just elaborate us on the differences, if there exist any, and what does the word ghostwriter really means?
Sure, that's a really great question. There's a lot of, when I tell people I'm a ghostwriter, I get a lot of questions about it. Um, Lots of different people use ghostwriters. CEOs or business owners use ghostwriters. Celebrities use ghostwriters. Also, individuals use ghostwriters. Sometimes people want to tell the story of their lives, even just to get it down in a book for their family. They might use ghostwriters as well. And there's a common misconception that people who use ghostwriters can't write. And that's absolutely not the case. In fact, everybody I've been a ghostwriter for is a fantastic writer. But for example, the last book I was the ghostwriter on, it took me 6 months full time, day in and day out, to write that book. If you're a busy person, if you're, a personality, if you own a business, you don't have time to do that. So that's when a ghostwriter can come in and help to get your story down in words for you. And what's been really great about being a ghostwriter is I'm able to pull from a lot of my different experiences to do that. So my background is in journalism, so I use that to interview the person and get their story out. And it's sort of like working in a team because sometimes if you're writing about yourself, I find it particularly difficult to write about myself. I think that's the hardest thing in the world to do. Um, and it's really helpful to have a partner across from you being curious and sort of digging into your story and pulling out things that you didn't even think about or haven't thought about in 20 years. And that provides a really great way of pulling out the story. And then also, another kind of string to my bow is in a former life, I was an actor. And I still do acting from time to time. And in that way, being a ghostwriter is sort of like being a character. You need to learn the person's voice and their way of speaking and kind of put that hat on while you're writing so that you can really communicate in the way that they want their voice to be communicated.
So, it's like portraying the role of the person you are assigned to write.
That's exactly it. Yes.
Correct. And talking about a content writer, right? So, how do you segregate both of them, content writer with ghostwriter?
Yeah, for a content writer, it's a little bit more straightforward, although it's similar in a lot of ways. Because if you're a content writer and you're writing content for a company, for example, they'll have a specific tone of voice, and the company you'll need to kind of communicate in the way that the company would speak. So it's not too far removed, actually. But depending on what you're writing as a content writer, it could be product copy, it could be SEO content. You're telling the story that the company wants you to tell in a slightly different way than the really personal ghostwriting approach.
Right. So it's totally on the approaches that we follow, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
And coming to the Moose content, right? So that's your business or like the company you started?
Yeah, so the company I started, I only started last year. It's my year anniversary coming up, actually.
Great.
Um, and I started off as just a single person at the start of the year. So taking on ghostwriting projects, taking on SEO content projects. And then I was lucky in that it sort of grew. And now I'm operating as like a mini agency. So I have subcontractors that work with me. And because I've been a journalist and writer for 15 years, I have a fantastic group of writers in my network who we call ourselves behind the scenes the best team in the world, because we love each other, we know each other, we've risen together. And so I subcontract them from time to time when the project is really big. For example, I'm doing an SEO content strategy for a health science company right now, and we're working as a little team. So Muse content takes on quite a broad range of things. And then I, as an individual, do ghostwriting projects and book coaching and developmental editing and things like that.
So what was the main reason behind starting this company? Because you were doing great in your career, right? You had a great job, you had a great experience. Why to take this risk of starting your own venture?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I can tell you this time last year, I felt like I was at the top of a roller coaster just about to go over the edge. It was very scary. Um, I sort of just felt like it was the right time. I have a very entrepreneurial spirit, and I think that's why I've risen in the ranks so much. I was editorial director at the last company I was at, and I had accumulated all of these great experiences across a lot of different areas. And I wanted to I wanted to see if I could make it work. So I gave myself 1 year. I said, okay, I have enough money kind of saved away. This is an experiment. I'll see if I can actually, do this on my own for a year. And if not, I'll just go back to regular full-time employment. And so far, the last year has exceeded my expectations. And the thing that I really love is I love being really close to the work itself. I think the kind of tragedy as you grow in your career, if you really enjoy the work you're doing, if you grow up the ladder, you're further removed from the actual work.
Right.
And even though I loved managing teams and I loved being a leader in that way, I really missed the actual work, but I didn't want to climb back down the ladder. So this seemed like the right move for me at the right time. I wouldn't have been able to do it at any other time in my career, though. I think I've got the network, the experience, and the boldness to do it now.
That's great. And talking about your journey till now, what do you think were the biggest challenges that you have faced till now?
Sorry, what were the biggest challenges I faced as I was growing in my career?
Yes.
Or yeah, that's a good question. I think the most important thing when you're in any career is to have grit, because sometimes you're going to run up against experiences that um, you see a problem and you want to change it, but you can't just do whatever you want, especially in a big or a small company. There's always somebody above you with a different view of how things should be done because they're looking at things from a different perspective. And this is the case even if you're a CEO, you might have shareholders who want things to be done in a certain way. So this happens at all levels, no matter where you're at in your career. And I think that was the biggest challenge for me was being really close to managing the people who were doing the work, seeing the problems they were facing, and then communicating up the chain why we need to structurally change things. And then, of course, the people up the chain are looking at other wider problems, and you kind of feel a little bit like you're stuck in the middle between the problems these people are facing and the bigger picture. And communicating that can be difficult, or kind of holding that space and trying to make sure you're helping them while meeting what the level above needs. That can be very challenging, and I think it takes a person with a lot of grit to hold that space, really.
Yeah, I totally resonate with you on that point. I think that's pretty important when someone at the top you has a different point of view and you have your own point of view, right? So coming to a common point is very challenging.
Yes.
And talking about your venture, right? So what was the biggest challenge in this case? Like starting your own company and growing it up. what was the biggest challenge you can think of?
There is so much to learn that you don't even know about. So you don't even know you need to know certain things until you suddenly are up at midnight trying to write a contract for yourself and you're not a lawyer. So it's things like that that are kind of unexpected new challenges that you never thought you needed to learn. I think being a small business owner, you wear so many hats. You are your own marketing person. You definitely hire an accountant. Do that. That's important. Um, and prospecting while also doing the work and trying to kind of bring everything together. It's a different kind of challenge. But the flip side of it is it's very exciting. Every day is your own. It's make or break. You can't be complacent. And equally, if you really need to rest, you can rest. So it's finding that kind of new what is normal. It can be challenging. So far, I'm really enjoying it, but then equally, you have to weigh it against that unknown. Like I don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing 3 months from now, and you have to be able to hold your nerve.
Correct. And there has been a lot of talk on AI, right? AI being used for content writing, for ghost writing, right? So, what's your take on this, or how do you see AI being called as a new content writer or a ghost writer?
Oh, you asked me the question, Utkarsh. Um, yeah, I mean, you can consume so much content on both sides of it. So many people saying if you don't adopt AI, you're going to be left behind, and other people saying AI is the worst thing ever. And it's really scary, I think, not especially for writers, but for all of us because it's such a new thing on mass. For me personally, I've especially at my last company, they used a lot of AI. So we did a lot of AI hackathons early on, when ChatGPT was really being released widely. So I was very skeptical and hesitant at first because, of course, as a writer, you kind of will be. Um, but I had to push through that fear um, and just explore it. And I think it's important when you fear something, you need to learn more about it, really, because fear is often ignorance, I think. The more you know, the more confident you'll feel. So I use AI as a tool. I think it can be a good tool for a writer, for example, to provide summaries or to organize things or to even just have like a second, a second, not person, but somebody to kind of joust with or come up with ideas. I do I think AI is going to replace writers long ultimately? I don't. I think the nature of writing is human connection, and that's where it started. We started sitting around fires, telling each other stories. That's where our ancestors started, and it's about that human connection. So I think there's always going to be a need for that. There's always going to be a need to know, especially with books that somebody was on the other side of that communicating to you. And I think that there's a magic in that, and that can't be replicated by AI. Having said that, though, I know a lot of other people in my industry have had a lot of issues finding work because of AI. So I can't pretend that it's not impacting people. For me personally, it hasn't impacted me, luckily. I hope it doesn't too much. But yeah, my husband studied AI at university and he's an engineer. So it's reassuring to be able to talk through all of it with him and learn more.
Right.
Um, yeah, I think stay curious. That's how I feel about it.
And if I ask you the opposite of this question, where a ghostwriter or a content writer should not rely on AI, what will be your answer to it?
Yeah, I think absolutely not. Personally, this is my personal line is, for example, I would never use AI for I wouldn't use AI for my clients.
Mm.
Just purely because of copyright worries. Plagiarism worries. I feel like for me, it's an ethical boundary. Also, I'm a writer and I love writing, and that act of creation is pleasurable for me. So I don't want that taken away. Um, I worry about the book publishing industry. I know certain publishers have said they're committed to not using AI, whereas others are completely leaning in. And I'm definitely not an expert in this field, but my instinct is, I think the written word should belong to those who have written it, and plagiarism is a worry.
Correct. Talking about SEOs, the importance of it, we all know, right? So how do you try to get it in your writing? Like, what are the different studies that you do, or what's your approach once you are writing something, and how you keep the SEO thing in your mind as well?
Yeah, so my the bulk of my history of my career is in SEO health content. And I've been really lucky that I've been at some of the companies that are kind of like the leaders in SEO health content. And there have been a lot of Google algorithm updates over the years that have kind of penalized other companies because the writing hasn't adhered to kind of keeping um, the reader at the heart of the content. There have been so many other outlets that have tried to kind of like hack SEO or, stuff keywords in or whatever. I think that if your guiding star is this content accurate, authoritative, and does it have the reader top of mind? If you're thinking as you're writing SEO content, is this helpful for the reader? Is this serving the reader? If it's not, and you're just kind of doing a tick box exercise to put, certain keywords or certain H2s in because you think it's going to kind of hack the algorithm and get you up there, you're shooting yourself in the foot because SEO content is evergreen and it's not going to stand the test of time. So those are seeds you're planting long term. You need to make sure they're really healthy seeds. And the way you do that is making sure it's helpful, thinking about what the reader is actually searching for with this content and what's going to help them and making sure it's accurate. So that's where I start rather than kind of, this keyword. Obviously, you want to make sure you're shored up from the meta text and from all of the tick boxes you need to have technically for SEO. But if your guiding star is this accurate? Is it helpful? You're going to land in a good place.
Right. Totally agree with you on this. And talking about your experience till now, is there any story that you think you should share with us that should be heard from your personal or professional life?
Oh, I love this. You're asking a storyteller to tell a story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a good story that seems unrelated but is related. And it's really about believing in yourself, in a roundabout way. So, like I mentioned earlier, a lifetime ago, I was an actor in Los Angeles. And before that, I trained for a long time as a martial artist, and I actually have a first degree black belt in Taekwondo. I haven't trained for a long time though, but I did wonder, if I ever had to use these skills, would I be able to in the real world? Because when you train, it's all under, you know what to expect. It's under a controlled environment. You're anticipating it, but out in the world, you just don't know, if you're going to be able to pull from these skills. So I was coming out of work one day, just off of Sunset Boulevard in LA, and I was, a very short, small little blonde girl, and and I had my purse around me, and suddenly I was just being yanked back, and somebody was trying to mug me. Basically, they thought, oh, she's gonna be easy, she's gonna get freaked out and give me her handbag. Um, but all of my skills and training and instincts just kicked in. And he was pulling my bag off of me, and just the momentum of him pulling me, I just went, "Ah," and just kind of shoved him in the face. And he bent over and just looked at me like I was crazy and just took off running. And I was just standing there like, and nobody was around. And I was like, nobody saw this. Um, but the point of that story is, we often second guess ourselves all the time. We are bags of nerves and insecurities. All of us are, even if we don't seem like we are. And it's really easy to think, oh, I can't do that thing, or I don't have those skills, but you have more than you know you do. And that's a good story that illustrates that. I had all of those skills in me. I could pull on them when I needed to. And I think as a writer, especially, I'm constantly finding myself in new territory that I don't know what I'm writing about, and I have to go off and do research, and you feel insecure. Oh my gosh, I can't do that. I can't be the ghostwriter for that person. They're so important. How can I possibly do that? But you can. You can do more than you think you can.
I think that's the best thing we need to be at and be optimistic on the same, right? I think the main takeaway I can get from your story is to believe in your instinct, and you have it in yourself. It's just the nerves that are stopping you from being at the top, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
If and last but not the least question, what is your goal right now, or what's your dream at this point?
Um, yes, I was actually talking about this with my son. He's 10. I was talking about this with him the other day about my dream. And I know this sounds weird, but I'm kind of living my dream right now. Like 20 years ago, I did this journal exercise, and I wrote down what my perfect day would be. And it's what most of my days look like now. It was that I would wake up next to a partner who loves me and I love, that we would have dogs. Uh, and then I would spend my day writing. And that was my perfect day. And that's what I do most days. I think it's really easy to keep thinking about the next thing. And we should be thinking about the next thing, of course. But it's really easy to overlook. Like you might be actually living your dream right now. And I have other goals. So my other big dream that is related to what I'm doing is I've just finished my debut fiction novel, and I'm in the process of querying literary agents. And so my next step dream is I would love to get a literary agent and get my fiction book published, and then keep writing from there. So more of that, please.
Right. Have you named it already?
I have. I'm gonna keep it to myself though,
Sure.
because if it gets picked up, maybe the title will change. So
Right. So on our next podcast, we can do on the same.
I love that.
Mari, the writer.
That sounds good.
Thank you so much, Mari, for your insight. It was really a wonderful experience for me to know your journey, and time flew away like you are a storyteller. So thank you so much for your insights and keep shining.
Thank you, Utkarsh. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.